Okay, so after 15 minutes in the freezer, it's hard, but it's not too hard. It's just chilled. You want to chill the butter down so it doesn't get everywhere, and it's easier to handle. I have a couple of Tart pans. My Tart pan doesn't have a removable base. It's better if it's removable, but it'll be okay for what we're doing. I got this at Daiso. It was like $1.50. Whatever Tart pan. Also, I'm going to do a couple of small ones just to show you the versatility of this dough. Okay, so I'm going to move these aside. Take my dough, put a little bit of flour down. Okay. We're going to roll this out. You have to make sure it's heavily floured, because if it sticks to the board, it'll be a sad day. Okay, see how it's cracking? Just a little bit. My edges are a little bit colder just because they were in the freezer. So I'm just going to warm up the sides, but you want to work quickly because this dough, if it gets too warm, it's really, really hard to handle. Okay. Just keep on moving it. If it's cracking, don't worry about it. This is a good dough. It's kind of like it's not like pie dough. If it cracks, you can't piece it together. So imagine this is kind of like edible clay. So you could just kind of push it together and it'll be fine. Okay, just keep on moving it around. Just make sure there's enough flour on the bottom. All right, so it just has to, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can take the whole piece of dough and lay it on top and it will crimp it. There's another way where you could just cut the bottom out and then get a snake of dough and fill in the sides. But I will do the normal one where I will roll it out about 2 inches larger than the than the Tart pan. And then I will lay it inside. I will lift it up and lay it. All right. I'm going to spray this. You always want to spray them. Oops. Just in case they stick. But there's a lot of butter in this. There's been times where they don't spray it, but I like to spray it as my overall insurance policy for everything. So you want to cut this about 2 inches around the edge. Get my knife. Okay. About 2 inches around. Just to trim it so it's not just a big piece of dough that I have to lift up. Okay, there's a couple ways. I could fold this. These I'm going to re-roll for my little tart shells. But I'm going to just roll it up a little bit. And I'm going to stick this right back in the refrigerator just because it's a little bit warm. It's just a little bit warm and I don't want it to get too warm that it's going to be hard. So I'm going to stick this right in the fridge while I roll up this guy. So a couple ways. I could fold this up and lay it inside like so. Okay. Or, because it's so, see, it's so delicate. I could just, it's getting warm really quickly. Okay, so we're going to roll it up on my rolling pin. Easy does it. Don't want to be too harsh. I have really hot hands for a pastry chef, and lay it in this way. I have really hot hands, so it warms up the dough really fast. So what you want to do is kind of lift it up and push it down to the edge. Okay. And if it breaks, don't worry. You could always add a little extra dough and patch it up. See how this broke? Could lift that and just kind of press it in. Okay, so you want to lift up your dough and then press down. The edge, you want to be a little bit thicker than the bottom. So I'm just going to actually, it's a little bit thinner on this side, so I folded that extra dough. But you could see, or just use your thumb. Press it down a little bit. Okay, it's okay if there's an overhang, because what we're gonna do is take a knife and we're gonna clean up the edge. Okay, I like to feel around. If it's a little too thin, I'll add a little bit more dough. Okay, but you want to make sure you press it into this corner here, because if you don't press it into that corner, you're gonna have a pocket in your tart shell. Okay, I think this is fine. I'm going to take my knife and just cut the edge off. Okay, and what I like to do is, after I cut the edge off, you want to prick the bottom with a fork. Okay, so you could kind of tell around the edge if it's thick or thin or thick. This edge might be a little thin, but it should be fine for what we're doing. Okay. Okay. Once you have that, you want to prick the bottom with a fork. And what I like to do is let this hang out in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes, just to make it solid again before I pop it in the oven. Okay, it's gonna go into the oven for 400 degrees. I'll show you how I set it up to bake it, but let me show you the small ones. Okay, roll out this dough. Make sure there's flour on the bottom. I'll show you one. Oh, see, it's really, really warm, so we gotta move a little fast. I have a cutter here, circle cutter. It's almost the size of this, but my dough is a little thick. So what I'm gonna do is add this to my tart shell, push it down, but I know it's thick, so I'll just push it against the edge and it'll push up the excess dough. Okay, so I'm gonna just use my thumb to kind of form that in there. And then the same thing with a knife. I usually use a paring knife, but I just can't find one at the moment. Cut the edge off. Okay, prick the bottom with a fork. Okay. I'll continue with the 4. But what I'm going to do is put this on a parchment paper lined sheet pan. After it's chilled in the refrigerator for a few minutes, I will take a little bit of parchment paper, okay? And then I'm gonna add some baking beans, if I could find them. Or rice. What we're gonna do is blind bake. Let me get some beans over here. Oh, all right. Oops, can't see it, sorry. So what I did was I pushed a little parchment paper down. I'm gonna pour some, whatever bean, if you have beans, you have rice. Lay it down. What it does is the pricking of the dough helps, if there's any air bubbles, the steam will escape. But also too, if we're gonna bake it, just to weigh it down just a tad, and it conducts the heat also. I'm gonna trim this a little bit. So for the little ones, I won't do it because they'll be fine, but the bigger ones, sometimes we get a little bit of air. So I'm gonna pop this in the oven and bake it for about 15 minutes, just until it's lightly brown. Okay, and I'll show you the end after in class. But actually, let me go back. If I'm blind baking it, I'm gonna cook it for about 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, I'm gonna remove the beans because the bottom will be lightly brown. I'm gonna remove the beans until everything's a nice color. Also too, halfway after I remove the beans, I'm gonna brush the bottom with a little bit of egg white that seals the crust up. So the pastry cream, when we add it, it's not gonna create a soggy crust. All right, so I'll show you that in a bit.